Hi, Spoofy. And we're going to get into Twig, so welcome. Welcome to Twig. This is The Weekend Geek. This is our weekly geekly news show, which will actually not be happening next week. So just a heads up, there will be no Twig next week as I will actually be out of town. But this week, we are still having it. And so these are all of the trending headlines and things that you should know about in the geek and nerd news world, looked at through a church nerd and nerdy church perspective and frame of reference. To get started, as we always do, we're going to be asking our question of the chat here on Twitch or over on YouTube. What are you currently watching? What are you currently playing? What are you currently reading? Let us know what's going on in your lives. For me, I'm currently watching an anime called Heavenly Delusion and back and forth between Hell's Paradise as well as watching Attack on Titan, trying to catch up with that one. So I'm kind of dancing between a lot of different anime right now. I highly recommend Heavenly Delusion. Hell's Paradise, I did end up dropping the manga of whenever I read it years ago. So we'll see if I enjoy the anime more, but I definitely think that that's one to keep on your horizon because I'm sure it will be a nerdy sermon topic. You will notice that both of them do contain a very interesting concept that is particularly reticent of the Christosphere. So we'll need to talk about them because they mention heaven and hell. So we'll talk about that. Let's see. Hunter Fan Mom just finished Mandalorian. Very nice. Is it done? Was this the last episode of this season? I didn't realize that one just came out. I'm reading two manga, one called Helk, one called Barrage. Helk is interesting it's kind of like a reverse. Imagine if a demon came to take over our world. This is the demon world and a human has come to take it over. And so people are kind of interested in that. Barrage is Kohei Horikoshi, who you may know from My Hero Academia. This is the work that came before My Hero Academia. It's okay. And I'm currently playing Ace Attorney Spirit of Justice, trying to get through that. I'm sure that I will be playing Coffee Talk for the rest of the time until I finish that game. And then we'll probably get back into Ace Attorney and try to finish that. And then I'm hopefully getting back into Yakuza 0, but I got to be real. It's just... it's a long game. It's a real long game, and your boy just doesn't have time. Hunter Fan Mom says, reading and listening to The Noticer by Andy Andrews. Humar Witch says, playing Magic the Gathering and Meet Your Maker. Also doing a D&D one-shot for some people in the CPC Discord tomorrow. That's awesome! Rock on! Well, I'm super excited for all the folks getting to learn Dungeons & Dragons and get their first experience, and for you to flex those DM muscles. With that, we're going to get started with some of our trending headlines. Feel free to continue interacting in the chat with things you've played, watched, or read in the past week, and also interacting with the news as it has come out. So we'll start with our first piece of nerdy news. For those of you that have kind of kept your pulse on one of the more popular Nintendo lawsuits going on right now, Team Executor was a ROM hack team from a couple of years ago, was not only distributing illegally downloaded copies of Nintendo games, but unfortunately was also selling them. And so where this one kind of falls apart is this Team Executor made millions of dollars selling paraphernalia related to Nintendoware that they stole. While the ROM hacking and preservation community certainly have different arguments behind game preservation and emulating and that kind of thing, this one was pretty cut and dry as far as you just can't make money off of it. At that point, you're really kind of towing the line of legality and ethicality whenever you start to do that. However, I do think that Nintendo might be laying down the hammer of the law a little bit too hard. It turns out that Gary Bowser, who was the person that they kind of pinned everything on from Team Executor, he did go to prison, but he's just been released on good behavior and put on parole, and will still be paying back 25 to 30% of whatever job he is able to find in the future to chip away at his astronomical amount of debt that he will certainly never be able to pay back, which is $14.5 million. $14.5 million. He was able to pay off $175 of it working in prison, but now that he has been released and will be able to hopefully get back to somewhat normal life, he will only be able to make a 65 to 70% salary for however long it takes him to pay back this astronomical amount of money. Nintendo is well known for putting down the hammer of the law and being unafraid to do such a thing, but I think that this is a slippery slope and a tricky spot to try and navigate morally. At the end of the day, as far as our 3 rules, do good, do no harm, and strive to grow, I think that Nintendo is doing more harm than is necessary to someone that has committed quite a legal offense. But also, it is harmful to take the materials of others and certainly to profit off of it. For game preservation, there's an ethical argument to be made for emulation. However, selling it does seem to cross that line, but as HunterFam just said, does seem a little overkill. So it could be either way. We'll see how this continues to pan out. I have a feeling this will be the last we hear of it. We will definitely hear about more people getting caught in the act of emulation. Hopefully we do not get too much more news about people selling related copies, because that's obviously not okay. So we'll see how that continues to go and how that continues to change, and we'll continue to support game preservation and things like Gerard Khalil, the completionist, did not too long ago in buying all of the games on the Nintendo 3DS and Wii U because their eShops were closing. So it is interesting that these two things kind of come off the tails of each other, because if you recall from that conversation about the completionist, the irritation was how difficult it was to do and how much money he wound up actually spending. It was nowhere near $14.5 million though. So it is interesting to keep the finger on the pulse of the emulation and game preservation community and to see the kind of lack thereof Nintendo does. This will actually not be our last conversation about Nintendo being a bit litigious, as we know they are. With that, we're going to move into our next topic. Indie World. This is a positive spin on Nintendo. For those of you that missed out yesterday, we did have lunch in the Discord server, !Discord, at any time on our Twitch. You can access that Discord server, or you can find it on our link tree. We had lunch yesterday and watched the Indie World over on YouTube together and saw all those games that were coming out. I love indie games. I think that the Switch was really well known as the indie machine, but to be honest, I think that the Steam Deck is not the Switch killer, but I do think the Steam Deck kind of does it just as well, if not better. I've been playing more indie games than anything, either on Game Pass or on my Steam Deck, than really I have on the Switch. So I think it's an interesting kind of break-off from the indie world that Switch is trying to promote. I'll be curious to see how they continue to do that. But there were a couple of exciting announcements that I thought were worth highlighting. First off, there was a big surprise. Video Game Donkey, popular YouTuber and reviewer, not too long ago announced that he would be creating a game production company, a development company, Big Mode Games, and they are producing their first game called Animal Well. It was at PAX not too long ago, and they showed a little teaser of it and a little interview with the developer that Donkey is supporting, as well as Donkey himself. So that was fun to see as a part of Indie World. Honestly, probably the biggest announcement, just because Donkey is at least somewhat star power compared to an indie showcase. Rift of the Necro Dancer is also got a little promotion, and I thought it really gave a good look at the game. Got me even more excited for a game that I'm already pretty excited about. Oxenfree 2 finally got a release date in July. That was a big deal. And then Blasphemous 2. Blasphemous is actually a game that we played on stream back in our very first year, I think, maybe 2021, during the uninstallables. So it's been a while since I've took a look at that one, but that was a really fun 2D Souls-like. So if you've never played Blasphemous, definitely worth your time. Very fun, very well crafted. If you like that Souls-like experience, it's going to do you pretty good there. With that, do let us know if you had any Indie World highlights that you would like to mention, either in the comment section or in the chat right now on Twitch, whichever, wherever. Let me know something that stood out to you. Those are just a couple that stood out to me. We're going to move on to our next one, which is a double news story about Netflix. Netflix is ending its DVD program. For those of you that are too young to remember, that's how Netflix got their start, was sending out DVDs in the mail as a way of combating the Blockbuster experience of going to the store and picking them up. Instead, kind of like a library book, you could just go, well, I mean, you still had to pay for it. You could request that a DVD be sent in the mail and receive whatever movie you wanted to see. It was much quicker than the Blockbuster. They got movies much faster than the Blockbuster did, and you got to keep them for longer than you might have at the Blockbuster or movie gallery or what have you. And so this, you were there 300 years ago. And so now Netflix has decided to cut that program. I'm not sure how many people were actually participating in it anymore, but it did kind of feel like the end of an era for me. It felt like a bit of a heart-wrenching moment to see that they were no longer offering that. However, in the double news story, the reason for this shift is that they are going to be focusing a lot of their efforts now instead on the password sharing crackdown that they promised years ago. Q1, their shares were plummeting pretty drastically, and so they have continued to push that program and insisted that they are going to be enforcing a stricter policy on password sharing, which for some reason has been a focus of Netflix as opposed to other companies in a more dramatic way. So I'll be interested to see how this continues to pan out and how Netflix continues to do. I am an avid fan. I don't I don't necessarily devote myself to their business practices by any means. I'm not that kind of person. I'm sure that they've done some things that are shady, and I'm sure they've done some things that are very charitable. So they kind of toe the line on actual morality and ethicality. But I like Netflix. I like the stuff they make. I like their originals, and I like the fact that they give people jobs. Even if they do cancel things, typically after one season, it gets them a little bit of heat. They have a great anime scene, and I think they do a really good job supporting animation, and so I'm going to support them just because of that and because it gives me the content that I like to watch. So do let us know what your thoughts are. I think Whit has a good point. No DVDs, also no friends. Very true. With that, we're going to move on to our next topic, which is, if you don't know who this is, you should know who this is. This is Eric Barone, also known as Concerned Ape. This is the developer, the solo developer of the original Stardew Valley. Stardew Valley, of course, the hit farming sim. The last update that it got would have been 1.5, and I think that was like a year and a half ago. And since then, Eric Barone has been working on another project, which is not a sequel, but it is his sophomore work, Haunted Chocolatier. He has stated recently that he is going to be doubling down his focus on a kind of final update in update 1.6, a new content patch, which will have new content to it. So it won't be as dramatic as 1.5, which really added a second game on top of the game. But 1.6 will be adding in new dialogue, new things to do, new people to see, kind of keeping that game alive, which, by the way, I don't think this has ever been even considered as a continuing series, a continuing franchise by the Game Awards. But you know what? I think that it should have been nominated for 1.5 because kudos to him for doing so much for a game that is 7 years old. I mean, this game is 7 years old. It's as old as Undertale. And Undertale, has had an update whenever it came to Switch, but it was really just a little Easter egg. Stardew Valley completely reinvented itself with 1.5. I think it deserves more credit than it gets. But with this content patch, he did say that he was putting pause on Haunted Chocolatier. So I think we still have more time before we can even expect any news on that. I would honestly at this point predict probably a 2025 release date, but we will see. Hopefully it'll come out sooner than that, but that's where I'm kind of putting my eggs in that basket. So let me know your thoughts on a new Stardew Valley update. Will this be enough to bring you back to it? I will say that this is a focus, he said, on modding. So he wants to give modders a little bit more kudos, a little bit more encouragement to play with his game, and that is a big focus for this next update. So that's pretty cool. With that, we're going to move on to our next one, our final trending headline of the day. Heardle. Those of you who remember Heardle, we did it pretty avidly in the Discord whenever it first dropped back in 2022, kind of coming off of the heels of Wordle. This was one of the adaptations that I thought was personally a bit more fun than the others. It got bought by Spotify last year, and I'm sad to say that Spotify has decided to cancel it, which this is surprising to me for multiple reasons. I could be wrong, but I really never thought of Spotify as being a cancellation service. Spotify has bought up a lot of things. They've bought up a lot of people, right? I mean, they bought Joe Rogan, right? So they keep buying exclusive podcasts. They keep focusing on podcasts. They do a lot of things and a lot of interesting covers. They, of course, do Spotify Wrapped. They started that Wrapped community. They have really shaped the field of music distribution, working a lot with a lot of different artists. They've gotten a little bit of fire for not working as well with some. You will probably remember the pretty huge Taylor Swift debacle, and then a pretty huge classic rock debacle, I think 2 years ago. So they've gotten themselves in hot water from time to time, but I would never have described them as people that drop things. They kind of try things and keep them going for a while. So the fact that Heardle is being dropped is a pretty big deal. I think this is a sad end of an era. I'm sad to see that Spotify is making this decision as of May 5th. So if you want to play Heardle, I would imagine that as they close this, there will be somebody that will take it up as a passion project and will recreate it hopefully under a different name so that they don't get themselves in trouble. But it's sad to see something sunsetted, especially whenever they bought it up to support it. And I never thought I would say this, but kudos to the Times for actually keeping Wordle going whenever Spotify, a up-and-comer upstart, kind of a next wave of technology, couldn't keep Heardle going. But the Times, which is a historic artifact, was able to keep Wordle going. We were all worried about Wordle being bought, but it looks like Spotify was the first one to fold. So pretty interesting turn of events there. And it says my wife and I still play Wordle every day. I have not picked it up in quite a while, but maybe that's the difference. I still hear a lot of people playing Wordle, and I don't really honestly hear a lot of people playing Heardle. So maybe it just kind of died out and fizzled and lost its spark, whereas Wordle did not lose its spark. Maybe it shows the difference between an iconic game and a spinoff of it. Who could say? But I'm very interested to see if Wordle gets any changes or adjustments. I sure hope not, because I think that it was definitely an iconic entry into the modern gaming space, puzzle gaming space. The most important game since the crossword, perhaps. I still prefer Sudoku myself, but there's a lot of interesting things to think and to spin off of this. But I'm just curious about the fact that Spotify dropped something. I'm very curious about the fact that Spotify would drop something. So maybe that's just me, but that's where my curiosity kind of lands on that one. With that, we're going to move into our next segment of the show, which is To the Discord. This is where we turn to you, dear viewers and chatters and participants and members of the Checkpoint community. These are all the things that were submitted to us via our Discord or via this link. If you want to submit news to us so that we'll consider it, then do submit your news to bit.ly/DearTwig, DearTwig. It's on the screen right now if you're watching. If you're just listening, then do hear that it is DearTwig, not DEER. So hear that and know that that is the case. With that, we're going to turn to our first news piece, which is actually submitted this week by Zando Calrissian. This is the Sonic the Hedgehog Lego collection set. They just released 4 new sets. So some of you may remember whenever we actually unboxed and built the Sonic the Hedgehog loop, Green Hill Zone, here on this stream. We took an entire stream to do that together. That was a ton of fun, a great stream. Well, now they have released 4 new sets, one of which contains my favorite Miles Tails Prower. So I will definitely be buying the Tails set. I don't really have any particular proclivity to Amy Rose, so I don't know if I'll buy her set. Surprised not to see Knuckles, and especially surprised to see this one that I showed you guys right here that's on the screen. They are actually trying to focus on making Sonic known for his speed again with the Legos. So they're creating a bit of a contraption that will allow you to rocket Sonic through a course using a little spinning ball and I don't know how else to describe that other than like a spring, a little spring that you're able to lock and load him in and then shoot him off into the distance. I've seen one that comes with a loop. I've obviously, you see this one right now that comes with a bit of a ramp. I'll be interested to see if it actually works. I think that the Mario gimmick didn't really work for me. I liked building Mario, but I had no interest in playing the course. This one, however, looks a little bit more kinetic, so maybe there's something to it that'll make it more engaging. But I really just want Tails, and that's all that I care about. Tails is my favorite Sonic character, and so I'm definitely going to be buying that set pretty much as soon as it becomes available. With that, next news story is actually from Paraspectus. A Breath of the Wild modder, Eric Pointcrow, known for his YouTube channel Pointcrow, is in a bit of hot water with Nintendo. It's not quite gotten to the point of litigiousness, but it is definitely search engine litigious. Not too long ago, kind of with the hype of Tears of the Kingdom being built up, Nintendo started laying down the hammer of the law on some well-known Breath of the Wild modders, striking some of their videos that they considered breaking copyright. Whether they actually did or not is still obviously up for discussion, but it's kind of weird to see them continuing to strike videos. For those of you that didn't grow up in the YouTube era, this is not new. This is not weird. Nintendo's very well known for copyright strikes and for being very against their content being shared in any way that they do not deem appropriate. So it's a different culture, it's different times, and it's different people. That doesn't make this okay. However, I did see that pretty much whenever he called it out and said, hey, please stop striking me, they started to strike him more. and now he has decided to stop making Breath of the Wild modding content, focusing more instead on Elden Ring. So it'll be interesting to see if this continues as Tears of the Kingdom goes back into launch, and it'll also be interesting to hear whether Nintendo backs off once Tears of the Kingdom is out and the hype has kind of died down, or the focus has shifted onto a new game. It'll be weird. As far as this is cut and dry for me. As far as the do good, do no harm, strive to grow, I think Nintendo is doing objective harm here on a community that could really use their support. However, I also want to be super clear about the fact that I do understand that this is a different culture, and I don't make any claims to understand through a kind of capitalist American lens, a way that they might understand their right and their role in their media and in their content creation. I disagree with it, but that doesn't mean that I think they're not doing good for their brand. I do think that they are doing harm to the community, however, and so that's kind of where I land. I'll be interested to see how that continues to pan out and how Nintendo continues to Nintendo. I don't think we should expect any changes. I think Nintendo's going to continue to lay down the hammer of the law, continue to be extra litigious, and no changes are really going to happen. I'm glad to see that Point Crow is not taking it any harder than he ought and is shifting his focus onto a different game that we're actually appropriately leaning into next. So with that, Hidetaka Miyazaki, which is the creator of Elden Ring and the Souls-like kind of franchise, is being named as one of the 100 most influential people of 2023 from Time Magazine. This was submitted by Buish. Of course it was, because Buish is our Miyazaki stan here. Very interesting. It's a good article. It'll be worth reading, especially if you enjoy keeping up with the 100 folks that are typically highlighted by Time. I always appreciate whenever video games or video game related people, or at least nerd related people, are highlighted and influenced, because I think that we are incredibly influential. That's why this whole thing is happening and why this conversation is necessary and why Checkpoint is necessary. So love this. Big fan of good news. Big fan of nerds being recognized and video game developers being recognized. So kudos, Miyazaki. Good job. And thank you, Buish, for submitting that. Perry says, back to our conversation on Breath of the Wild. I don't know if I buy the cultural context thing. Nintendo is very much capitalist in nature, but that's a comment for Discord. Agreed. Just kind of acknowledging at the very least, covering the base of the fact that I am not of the Japanese culture and that I am not really equipped to weigh in from my role as nerd pastor. You know what I'm saying? Not to toe the line too safely, but while I do think that they are doing objective harm to their community, I don't want to weigh in any further on the actual, like, my conversational ability to say what a culture is and isn't. That's why I said that and where it kind of goes. So yeah, definitely a better conversation for Discord, as you said. With that is the end of our To the Discord section. If you want to submit news to us, either just use our Discord channels or submit it directly to us for consideration at bit.ly/DearTwig. I do handpick the news from our Discord, so if you want yours to be extra considered, do send it to me, because that will get it even higher up the line there if you contribute in that way. With that, we're going to move on to everybody's favorite part of the show, or at least mine. At this point in nerd history. That's right. It is this point in nerd history. What happened on April 20th throughout time, throughout history? What are some nerdy things that I thought were worth bringing up? Some of them a little bit less nerdy than others, but I thought were still neat pieces of historical artifacts. So first off, in 2018, there were actually two games that were very different that were released on the same day of April 20th, 2018. Nintendo Labo, the cardboard game that was interactive with your Switch and a bunch of cardboard that you could make kits with, released back in 2018, RIP Labo. I thought it was a super cool idea. I was a big supporter, a big fan of it. I thought that more STEM things needed to be attributed to video games. I was a big fan. Sad to see they kind of let them go by the wayside, but I wish it had gone better, because I sure did think they were neat. Also on that day, Doodle Date, not Double Date. Doodle Date, which is a absurd hand-drawn, I guess I can call it hand-drawn, literally hand-drawn dating sim. If you've never played Doodle Date, it gets spooky in all the right ways. It's super fun. It's not Doki Doki level of twists, but it's pretty close. It's a similar vein at the very least. If you've never played Doodle Date, you oughta. Back in 2012 in Japan, Fire Emblem Awakening released on the DS. In 2007, Persona 3 released in Japan. In 2006, RIP Mother 3 released on the Game Boy Advance in Japan in 2006. 1990, the original Fire Emblem, the very first Fire Emblem with Marth, one that just got its release on the Nintendo Switch not too long ago, I think 2 years ago. Released on the Famicom back in '90 in Japan on April 20th. And then these are just kind of fun facts, not really inherently nerdy. Excuse me. In 1982, Sally Ride was named the first female astronaut. And I don't actually know how to pronounce his name. I'm going to say Guyon S. Bluford Jr. was the first African-American astronaut. Fascinating that those two things happened on the same day. Pretty big landmark, pretty big milestone for civil rights and equal rights, and a huge deal, 1982. Doesn't feel that long ago whenever I actually say the date out loud. 1960, which also doesn't feel that long ago whenever I say the date out loud, on April 20th, 1960, it was the first time that baseball players ever had their names on the back of their uniforms. Fun fact, who knew? In case you ever wanted to know that information, April 20th, 1960 was the first game in which baseball players had names on their backs of their uniforms. There you go. The more you know. With that, this has been At This Point in Nerd History. With that, we're going to go into our penultimate segment of the show. Upcoming releases, things that are going to be happening in the next week. Unfortunately, as I've already said, I will not be here next week, and so this is kind of just a list of things for this week, and next week you won't get a list of things, so you'll have to wait. You'll have to somehow discover them on your own. Maybe I'll put together some kind of infographic or something and dump it on the Discord just so that people have a kind of consistent resource from Twig. I'll let you know. I'll let you know as I'm able to work on that. It really depends on how next week goes and how much time I actually have on my schedule. But let's start with our upcoming releases for the week. First off, movies coming out in the next week. All of them are actually coming out on the exact same day, which is tomorrow, which is Friday, which is movie day. It's not super unexpected or surprising. Beau is Afraid, the latest Joaquin Phoenix movie is hitting the airwaves. Beau is Afraid. I'm curious about it, but not super curious. It looks pretty weird. Looks pretty timey-wimey stuff. I'm not totally sure what it's about, actually, but we'll find out more about it and if it's worth our time to actually go and see as reviews start piling in. Also coming out tomorrow, Evil Dead Rise, the latest entry into the Evil Dead franchise. And then the backwards spy dating scenario with Chris Evans and Ana de Armas. Ghosted is coming out. For those of you that don't understand what I'm saying there, basically Chris Evans is a hapless boyfriend to Ana de Armas that is an undercover spy. So typically those get reversed. This is playing at those stereotypes. And then also coming out tomorrow, The Covenant will be dropping. With that, we're going to get into games coming out in the next week. So first, we have all the games coming out today. These are all the games actually hitting the airwaves right now. Either they're already out there or they will be out soon. Coffee Talk 2, which we'll be playing after Twig today. Arcana of Paradise, Haven Dock, Molly Medusa, Mr. Sun's Hatbox, which is an indie to keep your eye on. I'll be interested to see how Mr. Sun's Hatbox does. OTXO, Outer Terror, Start Over, Stray Blade, 10 Hearts, and Zoetti. Those are all the games hitting the waves today. But coming out throughout the week, on the 21st, we have Dead Island 2, believe it or not. Supposedly actually coming out, we'll see. Mia and the Dragon Princess coming out. Summon Quest coming out, all those on the 21st. On the 22nd, Toa, Overbeast, Advance Wars, also something that I never thought would come out. Advance Wars 1 and 2 Reboot Camp is officially coming out on the 24th. Ruin Arc is coming out on the 24th. Shadows of Doubt. Amanda the Adventurer coming out on the 25th. It's not what you think. It is not Dora the Explorer. It is yet another creepy Fazbear-esque Five Nights at Freddy's adventure. The 25th, Fairy Fencer F Refrain Chord. If you're a fan of the Fairy Fencer F games, that is getting a new game coming out. Roots of Pacha on the 25th. Strayed Lights on the 25th. 26th, we have After Image, Desta, The Memories Between, and Honkai Star Rail, for those of you that are a fan of those mobile games. Those are all the games coming out in the next week. If you have any games or movies that you would like to keep an eye on, let us know. DLC that is hitting in the next week, we'll actually have Xenoblade Chronicles 3 that will be coming out. The DLC Future Redeemed, which kind of looks like a Golden Torna X-esque DLC. We'll see if it's able to bring enough content. I still have to finish Xenoblade Chronicles 3, so we'll see if I end up playing the DLC or not. TV shows coming out in the next week. Have you heard about Mrs. Davis? Because I heard about Mrs. Davis and I brushed it aside because I thought it looked like a silly show that I wanted nothing to do with, until I learned the director is Damon Lindelof. So now I'm on board. I'm going to go watch Mrs. Davis. I don't know what to expect. It did drop today, but if you're unfamiliar with Damon Lindelof, The Leftovers, Lost, all sorts of mind-blowing, mind-bending TV shows, and Miss Davis is his latest, coming out on Hulu. And then Drops of God is coming out on Apple TV on the 21st. Looks like a kind of like Wine Country-esque drama. Not sure exactly what that's about. And then in the world of comics, coming out on the 26th, next Wednesday, the 26th, you will see a Star Wars Darth Vader comic hitting the market called Red, White, and Red. As I understand it, it's a showcase of already existing comics from Darth Vader, but they are going to be limiting the colors to only black, white, and then red ink. So that's going to be a pretty cool little timepiece, something to see, a good piece of art, maybe to put on a shelf. That will be that for you. So if you want to know about any of those kind of things, or if you want to hype up any of those kind of things, if anything catches your ears, let us know in the comment section or in the chat that you are interested in any of that content and media. With that, we're going to move into our final segment of the show, which is the Meme of the Week. We have a Memes and Goofs channel over in our Discord, ! Discord, and anybody in the chat if you want to join that. It'll also be linked down below. And our meme of the week is actually from myself this week. I just go with whatever has the most reaction, so I'm flattered. Thank you all for laughing at my joke. I found this online. This is a fun fact from an IGN-esque game, Haikyuu, which is, it's got Daredevil and Scarlet Witch. It says, fun fact, characters wearing red usually don't have vision. Of course, if you know, you know, and sorry, RIP. With that, we're going to wrap up the show with our final goodbye. If you enjoyed The Weekend Geek, if you listened this far, if you watched this far, then thank you for watching. If you're watching us on YouTube, first off, Twitch peeps, say hi, YouTube. If you're watching us on YouTube, thank you for watching this far. If you're listening on a podcast form, thank you for listening thus far. If you would, let us know in the comment section, how did you like this? Was this one that you enjoyed? Give us a thumbs up if it's one that you enjoyed particularly. So let us know down in the comments, what are some things you're excited for? What are some news pieces that you found interesting or engaging? Or just let us know what you're watching, reading, and playing. We'd love to get to know you better in that way. With that, we're going to wrap up the show with our 3 things that we believe to be true about every single one of you out there. Number 1, that God loves you, like really, really loves you. Number 2, we love you. We want community with you. That's what we're doing here on Twitch, Discord, and YouTube. And number 3, that you, yes, you matter. You are a person of sacred worth. The world is a better place. Why? Because you are in it. Folks, with that, and until the next time that I see ya, bye-bye!